I could see the blood drain from my husband's face as his mother Linda stood up from the dinner table, her wine glass trembling in her hand. "You know," she said, her voice cutting through the Thanksgiving silence like a knife, "I've always wondered what it felt like to be married to someone so utterly incompetent." The words hung there in our dining room, our beautiful dining room with the chandelier I'd spent weeks decorating, and everyone froze. My sister-in-law gasped. My mother stared at her plate. But Linda wasn't finished. She turned to face me directly, her eyes gleaming with something I'd never seen before. Malice. Pure, calculated malice. "Everyone here knows the truth," she continued, "even if Michael refuses to admit it. His wife is a fraud." That moment would replay in my mind 1,000 times over. But to understand how we got there, you need to know who I was before that dinner. You need to know the woman I'd been just 72 hours earlier. My name is Ashley Martinez, and 3 years ago, I was living what I genuinely believed was a fairy tale. Not the Disney version. I'm 34 years old, I pay taxes, I have a mortgage, but the real adult version that somehow felt even better. I was married to Michael Chen, a cardiac surgeon at St. Mary's Medical Center. We'd met at a hospital fundraiser where I was working as a development director, raising money for pediatric cardiology. He was presenting research. I remembered thinking he was the most focused person I'd ever seen, not arrogant, just entirely present in what he was doing. When he asked for my number afterward, I said yes without hesitation. We bought our house in Riverside Hills 4 years ago, a 1970s colonial that we completely renovated. I'm talking original hardwood floors, a state-of-the-art kitchen, a master bath with a freestanding soaking tub that looked like it belonged in a spa. The neighborhood was quiet, but not isolated. Our neighbors were friendly. The schools nearby were rated excellent, though Michael and I had decided not to have kids. We'd been clear about that from the beginning. We wanted to travel, to focus on our careers, to have freedom. I loved my job. After leaving the hospital fundraising position, I'd started my own consulting business, helping nonprofits improve their donor relation strategies. I worked from home most days, which meant I could pick up Michael from the airport when he flew back from conferences, could cook dinner instead of ordering takeout, could actually be present in my own life. Our income was solid. Michael made close to $400,000 a year, and my consulting brought in another $80,000 to $100,000 annually. We weren't rich by Silicon Valley standards, but we were comfortable. Genuinely, deeply comfortable. People always ask what the relationship was like, as if they're looking for the crack that was always there. But honestly, it was good. Michael would text me stupid memes from his phone during lunch. I'd leave little notes on his car before he left for work. We had inside jokes about his mother's obsession with antique porcelain and my inability to keep plants alive. We had sex regularly. We made each other laugh. Were we perfect? No. Did we argue about who should handle the household finances and whether his sister called too often? Sure. But we were solid. His family was the only complicated part, though I didn't see it that way at the time. Michael's parents had divorced when he was 12. His father, Robert, had moved to California and eventually started a new family. Michael was raised primarily by Linda in a modest house in the suburbs of Portland. She'd worked as a hospital administrator, ironic given how things would turn out, and she'd made it very clear that her son was her greatest achievement. When Michael told her we were getting married, she'd cried. Not happy tears, complicated tears. Linda had always been polite to me, but there was an edge to it. She'd comment on my clothes. "Oh, that's a bold color choice," or, "I suppose that's trendy now." She'd suggest I was too ambitious with my business, that I should be focusing on being a proper wife. She'd ask Michael pointed questions about whether he was happy, whether I was treating him well, as if I might secretly be draining his bank account or cheating on him. Michael would always laugh it off. "That's just Mom," he'd say. "She's protective of me." I tried to be good to her. I sent her thoughtful gifts. I invited her to our home for holidays and dinners. I asked her advice about recipes and listened, actually listened when she talked about her life. I was trying to build a relationship with my mother-in-law, the way you're supposed to. And for the most part, it seemed like it was working. But then came the fall, specifically October of this year. Michael's father, Robert, had passed away suddenly, a heart attack, which was almost too cruel given Michael's profession. Michael was devastated. They hadn't been close, but there's something about losing a parent that strips away all the complicated feelings and leaves just raw grief. I held him while he cried. I booked the flights to California for the funeral. I took his hand through the service. And Linda called him every single day that week, multiple times a day, texts at midnight asking if he was okay, showing up at our house unannounced with casseroles. Michael said she was just grieving too, that she needed her son right now. I understood that. I stepped back. I made room for them to connect during this painful time. That was my first mistake, though I didn't know it yet. The second mistake came in early November, when Linda invited us both to her house for an early Thanksgiving dinner. She said she wanted to do something special, to gather the family while Michael was still processing his grief. She specifically asked me to come help her cook. Mother-in-law bonding time, Michael had joked, squeezing my hand. I felt a small flutter of hope. Maybe this would be the moment where Linda and I finally became genuinely close. Maybe loss could bridge the gap between us. I spent an entire Saturday at her house. I helped her prepare a 22-pound turkey, made 3 different side dishes, prepared her grandmother's cranberry sauce recipe from scratch. Linda seemed warm. She told me stories about Michael as a child. She thanked me for being so supportive during Robert's death. At one point, she even hugged me. A real hug, not the stiff side embrace she usually offered. When Michael arrived that evening, his mother pulled him aside in the kitchen. I heard her voice drop lower. "I've been meaning to talk to you," she said. "There's something you should know about Ashley." That's when everything changed. I heard her voice drop lower. "I've been meaning to talk to you," she said. "There's something you should know about Ashley." My stomach tightened. I was in the living room, pretending to scroll through my phone, but every nerve in my body went on alert. Michael's tone shifted immediately, confused, concerned. "What do you mean, Mom? What about Ashley?" Linda didn't answer right away. I could hear the deliberate pause, the theatrical timing of someone building towards something devastating. "I didn't want to tell you this while you were grieving," she continued, "but I can't keep this secret anymore. It's eating me alive." I stood up. I don't know why. Some instinct told me I needed to see this face to face, not hidden around a corner like a coward. I walked into the kitchen where they were standing by the island counter. Michael's face was pale. Linda's expression was almost serene, like someone who'd finally unburdened themselves of something they'd been carrying for months. "What's going on?" I asked, keeping my voice level. Linda turned to me with sad eyes, pitying eyes. "Oh, Ashley, I was hoping we could talk about this privately with Michael first." "Talk about what?" Michael looked between us, genuinely confused. "Your wife," Linda said softly, "isn't who you think she is." My heart was hammering, but I forced myself to stay calm. "That's incredibly vague, Linda. If you have something to say it." She took a breath. "I've been doing some research about your consulting business, and I found some very concerning things." The room seemed to tilt slightly. "What kind of research?" "Online, public records, articles. I found a lawsuit from 2019 involving your company and a nonprofit called the Children's Future Foundation. You were accused of misappropriating funds." The blood drained from my face. Not because it was true, it wasn't, but because she'd found something real, something I'd hoped had disappeared into the internet's archive of forgotten things. "That was settled," I said immediately. "It was a misunderstanding about—" "A misunderstanding?" Linda's voice had changed. It was sharper now, more confident. "The settlement agreement required you to pay back $40,000, didn't it? And the case was sealed only because of an NDA. Most people wouldn't even know to look for it." Michael was staring at me. Ashley? What is she talking about? I could feel everything I'd built starting to crumble. Michael, I was going to tell you. It was years ago. A client accused me of... It was a complicated situation with how the funds were tracked. My lawyer said the best move was to settle and move on. It wasn't fraud. It was an accounting dispute. An accounting dispute, Linda repeated, as if she was tasting the words and finding them distasteful. Is that what you call it? Yes, I said firmly. That's exactly what I call it. And if you'd bothered to ask me instead of sneaking around doing research, I would have explained the whole thing. Michael's jaw clenched. Why didn't you tell me about this? Because it was handled. Because I didn't want you to worry about something that was already resolved. Because... I stopped. Because I was ashamed. Because I'd made mistakes in my early years as a consultant, and someone had tried to take advantage of that. Because it was complicated and messy, and I wanted to move forward. Because you were hiding it, Linda said, and there was something almost triumphant in her voice. That's when I realized what was happening. This wasn't about me. This was about her. This had always been about her. You know what? I said, looking directly at her. I'm done with this. Michael, we can talk about this privately. But I'm not doing this here, with your mother playing prosecutor based on whatever incomplete information she scraped off the internet. Incomplete? Linda's voice rose. I have documents, Ashley. I have the court filing. You have a sealed case that you somehow found and are now using to ambush me in your kitchen, I said coldly, which tells me everything I need to know about your intentions here. Michael held up his hand. Both of you, stop. Ashley, we need to talk. Mom, can you give us a minute? Linda looked genuinely shocked that she wasn't winning. She'd expected Michael to turn on me immediately, to see me as a liar and a fraud. Instead, he was asking her to leave so he could hear my side of the story. The disappointment on her face was almost palpable. Once she left the room, Michael and I sat at the dining table in heavy silence. He wouldn't look at me. Tell me everything, he finally said. So I did. I told him about the Children's Future Foundation, about the grant I'd helped them secure, about how their finance director had misallocated funds and then claimed it was my fault. I told him about my lawyer's advice to settle rather than litigate. I told him that I'd been ashamed of it, not because I'd done anything wrong, but because I'd made a professional mistake in trusting the wrong person. I told him the $40,000 came from my personal savings because my insurance didn't cover it. Michael listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. Why didn't you tell me? He asked finally. Because I was embarrassed, I admitted. Because I didn't want you to think less of me. Because it felt like ancient history and I didn't want to drag you into it. He nodded slowly. I get that, but Ashley, we're married. This is the kind of thing we should discuss. What if it had come up some other way? What if it had affected your business now? It didn't, I said, and I've been incredibly careful since then. Every client relationship, every financial transaction, I've documented everything. I learned from that mistake. Michael rubbed his face. He looked exhausted. I'm not angry, he said. I wish you'd trusted me with this. I know, I said softly. I'm sorry. But even as I apologized, something inside me was hardening. Because Linda had done this deliberately. She dug up my past, weaponized it, and used it to drive a wedge between us. And Michael, even though he was being rational about it, had still let her do it. He'd still looked at me with doubt in his eyes. The next 3 weeks were tense. Michael didn't bring it up again, but I could feel it there between us, a small crack in the foundation that hadn't existed before. He was more distant. He worked later. When we were together, there was a politeness to our interactions that hadn't been there before. I also started paying closer attention to what Linda was doing. I searched her social media. I looked at her credit card statements when I got the chance. We had a shared family account for household expenses. I wanted to understand her motivations, to figure out what had driven her to go so far. What I found made my blood run cold. Linda had been in serious financial trouble. Her house, the one she'd owned free and clear for years, had a second mortgage on it. She had credit card debt totaling over $70,000. Her bank account had less than $3,000 in it. And most damning of all, there were emails between her and a financial advisor discussing Michael's inheritance from his father's estate. Robert had left his entire estate to Michael. We're talking about $3.2 million. And Linda, who'd assumed she would inherit it, had discovered that Robert had updated his will 5 years ago, cutting her out completely and leaving everything to Michael, with the understanding that Michael would help her if she needed it. She needed it, desperately. And she'd realized that if Michael divorced me, or if I was publicly discredited as a fraud, he might be more inclined to give her money to help with her troubled daughter-in-law situation. Or he might just be so grateful to have a sympathetic ear, his mother's, that he'd be more generous with his inheritance. I sat at my desk one afternoon, staring at these emails, and I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't about me at all. This was about money. This was about Linda's financial desperation, manifesting as an attack on the person she saw as the obstacle to her son's inheritance. And I realized something else. I couldn't prove any of this. The financial information I'd accessed without Michael's explicit knowledge was arguably illegal. The emails were private. I had nothing I could use without implicating myself. So I did what I should have done weeks earlier. I called a divorce attorney. Her name was Catherine Willis, and she was excellent. She listened to my entire story without judgment, asking clarifying questions, taking notes. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. "Do you want a divorce?" she asked. "I don't know," I admitted. "I don't think Michael did anything wrong. He let his mother manipulate him. And now, I don't know if I can get past that." "Fair," Catherine said. "But here's what concerns me from a legal perspective. If you're contemplating divorce, you need to secure your financial position immediately. Your consulting business, your savings, anything that's yours. And you need to do it carefully, because if Michael suspects you're planning to leave, things can get very ugly very quickly." I felt sick. Is that really necessary? "It's not necessary," Catherine said, "but it's prudent. Listen, I've seen this before. Family drama, financial pressure, infidelity sometimes. These things don't stay contained. They spread. And if Linda is as motivated as you suggest, she's not going to stop with one accusation. She's going to keep digging, keep pushing, keep trying to isolate Michael from you." She was right. I knew she was right. "Do you have somewhere you can go?" Catherine asked. "A friend? Family?" "My sister lives in Seattle," I said, "about 3 hours away." "Good. I want you to think about that option. Not because you need to leave immediately, but because you need to have a plan. You need to know your exit strategy." I left her office feeling like I was living in a spy thriller. I was supposed to go home, act normal, pretend nothing had changed, while secretly preparing to potentially leave my marriage because my mother-in-law had manipulated my husband into doubting me. Except when I got home, Michael was waiting for me with a serious expression. "We need to talk," he said. My heart dropped. Had he found out about my visit to the attorney? Had Linda said something else? "My mom called me today," he continued. "She told me she's been looking into your business finances. She said she found some irregularities." I felt a flash of anger so intense it was almost blinding. "She's lying, Michael. Whatever she told you is a lie designed to manipulate you." "How do you know that?" he asked. "Because I know your mother. Because she's desperate. Because—" I stopped. I was about to tell him about her financial situation, about the inheritance, about all of it. But I couldn't. Not without admitting how I'd found that information. "Because she's been trying to turn you against me since we got married, and this is just the latest attack." Michael stood up. "I think you should tell me what's really going on, and I think you should tell me now." "What's really going on is that your mother is toxic," I said, my voice shaking. "She's jealous of our marriage. She's resentful that you chose me." And now that your father is dead and you've inherited his money, she's trying to convince you that I'm some kind of criminal so you'll give her access to it. That's a serious accusation, Michael said quietly. It's the truth. He was silent for a long moment. Then he said, I think I need some time to think. I'm going to stay at the hospital's on-call room for a few nights. I watched him pack a bag. I watched him carry it to his car. And I realized that I'd just lost my marriage to his mother's greed and his own inability to see through her manipulation. The next 72 hours were the longest of my life. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I sat in our beautiful house that suddenly felt like a prison and waited for the other shoe to drop. It dropped on Thanksgiving. Michael came home that morning and suggested we go to his mother's house for dinner. He said it was important that we try to work things out as a family. I almost laughed at the absurdity of it, but I agreed because I was hoping it might actually clear the air. I was wrong. We arrived at Linda's house at 5 o'clock. Michael's sister Jennifer was already there with her husband David and their 2 kids. My parents had also been invited, a detail Michael had conveniently forgotten to mention. When I saw my mother's face, I knew Linda had told her some version of events designed to make me look like a liar. Dinner was tense but superficially normal. We made small talk. We passed dishes. We pretended everything was fine. But I could feel the weight of all the unspoken things sitting at the table like an unwanted guest. It wasn't until dessert that Linda made her move. She stood up, her wine glass in hand, and the room went quiet. I have something I need to say, she announced. Something that's been weighing on me. Michael's jaw clenched. My mother looked uncomfortable. Jennifer and David exchanged a glance. I've been doing some research, Linda continued, into my daughter-in-law's background, and what I've found is deeply troubling. Mom, don't, Michael said quietly, but she was already in motion. She pulled out a folder from beside her chair, printed documents, highlighted passages, what looked like official records. In 2019, Ashley was involved in a fraud case, Linda announced to the room. She misappropriated funds from a nonprofit. She paid $40,000 to settle a lawsuit that was sealed under NDA. The room erupted. My mother gasped. Jennifer's eyes went wide. David actually stood up, as if preparing to physically remove himself from the situation. That's not what happened, I said, my voice steady even though my hands were shaking. And you know it's not what happened, Linda, because I explained it to you and Michael weeks ago. You explained your version, Linda said sweetly, but I've done independent research. I've spoken to people at the foundation. The narrative is quite different. You spoke to people? I stood up. Who did you speak to? How did you even get that information? That case is sealed. A lawyer friend helped me, Linda said. There are ways to access sealed records if you know the right people. I looked at Michael. Are you hearing this? Your mother illegally accessed sealed court records to try to discredit me. That's not illegal, Linda said calmly. It's public record. It's not public record, I said. It's sealed, which is why you had to have a lawyer access it, which is illegal. Even if it were illegal, Linda continued, ignoring me completely, it would be worth it to protect my son from a woman he clearly can't trust. That's when something inside me snapped. Not in an angry way, in a clarity way. I suddenly saw the entire situation with perfect, crystalline understanding. I looked at Michael. How much has she asked you for? I asked quietly. He went very still. What? Your mother. How much money has she asked you for? Ashley, that's not... Linda started. Your father left you $3.2 million, I said, still looking at Michael. Your mother expected to inherit it. When she found out she didn't, she started attacking me. So I'm asking you directly. Has she asked you for money? Michael wouldn't meet my eyes, which was answer enough. How much? I pressed. She said she needed help with her house, Michael said quietly. She said she was struggling. How much, Michael? $200,000, he finally admitted. I felt something break inside me. It wasn't the money. It was the fact that he'd almost given it to her without telling me. That he'd let his mother's campaign against me cloud his judgment so much that he was considering handing over a significant portion of his inheritance to help her while she was actively trying to destroy our marriage. I looked around the table, at my mother, who looked ashamed, at Jennifer, who looked furious, at Linda, who was watching me with something that might have been satisfaction. "I need to say something," I said, my voice very quiet, "and I need everyone to listen carefully." I took a breath. "Linda, you've done something today that I can't come back from. You've shown me who you really are. Not as a mother, but as a person. You're someone who will dig through sealed court records, who will distort facts, who will attack someone you claim to care about, all because you're desperate for money. You couldn't manipulate Michael directly, so you tried to turn him against me. And the saddest part is that it almost worked." I turned to Michael. "I loved you," I said. "I loved you, and I trusted you, and I tried to build a life with you. But you let your mother come between us. You let her convince you that I was lying without even giving me the benefit of the doubt. You were ready to give her money your father left you, while she was actively trying to destroy me." "Ashley, Michael started. "No," I said, "I'm not done. I've already consulted with a divorce attorney. I'm going to file for separation next week. We'll split our assets 50-50 as the law requires. You'll keep your inheritance, I'll keep my consulting business, and we'll both move on with our lives." "You can't," Linda started. "I absolutely can," I said, turning to her. "And you know what the funny part is? I could have sued you for illegal access to sealed court records. I could have destroyed your credibility completely. But I'm not going to, because unlike you, I have integrity. I'm going to walk away from this situation with my head held high, knowing that I did nothing wrong. Can you say the same thing?" The silence in the room was absolute. My mother reached over and squeezed my hand. Jennifer mouthed, "Good for you." And Michael just sat there, staring at his plate, finally understanding what he'd lost. I left Linda's house that night and drove to my sister's place in Seattle. I called Catherine Willis the next morning and officially started the divorce process. It took 4 months, but it was relatively amicable. Michael didn't fight me on anything, which told me he knew I was right. 6 months later, my consulting business was thriving. I'd picked up 3 new major clients and expanded my team. I'd bought a small condo in Portland overlooking the river. I'd made peace with my mother and spent time rebuilding that relationship. And I'd learned something crucial about myself. I was stronger alone than I'd ever been with someone who didn't truly have my back. The last time I heard about Michael, he was dating someone new. Someone Linda apparently approved of, which told me everything I needed to know about his judgment. I hope he's happy. I genuinely do. But I don't regret leaving. Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't fighting for a relationship. It's walking away from one that's built on a foundation of doubt and manipulation. And the lesson I learned, the one I'd tell anyone going through something similar, is this: never, ever let someone else's desperation become your shame. Never apologize for having a complicated past. And never, ever stay with someone who believes his mother over his wife. Because that's not love. That's just a slow form of suffocation disguised as commitment.